full speed in the lane, still getting it.
So some of the core tenets that we were working with Black Ops 2 is we really wanted to push the boundaries in pretty much every front that we could on Call of Duty. So whether it was the campaign or the multiplayer or the zombies mode, we wanted to bring new experiences and new gameplay to Call of Duty players. So the story in Black Ops 2 is a direct sequel to Black Ops 1, which means that the characters that you played in Black Ops 1, Mason, and you played with Woods and your CIA handler Hudson, they're coming back in Black Ops 2. But the thing about Black Ops 2 is that it spans time and it spans generations. And while part of the game takes place in the first Cold War, towards the end of that period in the 1980s, late 80s, the other part, almost 2/3 of the game, takes place in the year 2025. And when you talk about, 2025 and you talk about Black Ops with, sort of the historical settings and the authenticity that we try and create, and then we weave our storyline and our fiction through that, that brings up a lot of questions about what is the year 2025 all about. And we did research on that, working with experts like Peter Singer, who's a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, to help us craft a plausible near-future scenario where there is a second Cold War. So you have these parallel Cold Wars going on, and what you have is you have this villain, and he is at the center of this story. And in the first Cold War, as you play through the eyes of the characters that you played in the first Black Ops, you'll see how this villain's motivations came to being, how the monster was created. From the very beginning, we were working with David Goyer. So our director, Dave Anthony, and David Goyer were finishing up Black Ops, and while we were in submission, they were just really excited about what we had created with Black Ops and that fiction that we created and the characters, and there were a lot of stories left untold from that tale, as you know, if you played Black Ops and you watched it all the way through. They started conceiving what they would do with Black Ops 2, and David Goyer, for those of you who don't know him, he is the writer behind The Dark Knight. He created Heath Ledger's Joker, and one of the things they really wanted to do was to be able to not only tell this epic story inside of Black Ops 2 and tell those, the adventures of those characters as they continue to live on, but they wanted to create a three-dimensional villain inside of a Call of Duty game. And they were kind of fascinated with that challenge, and they really wanted to have that character be at the center of this conflict inside of Black Ops 2. And what you'll see is that this villain is literally behind what's going on in this second Cold War as the game plays out.
What happens when the enemy steals the keys?
So for the very first time inside of a Call of Duty game, we wanted to introduce branching story paths. It plays out on multiple levels in the game. So as you're playing through, some of the choices that you make will have an impact, and it'll be done Call of Duty style, right? You'll be in the middle of it, and it'll be intense, and we're not going to pop up an A or B choice for you on the screen. You're going to have to make a choice right there, and depending upon what choices you make, it could have serious implications on the storyline. It could have serious implications on the hero, on your squad mates. It could have implications on the villain, on his henchmen. There's really multiple story arcs that are going inside of Call of Duty Black Ops, and your choices can affect the outcome of how those are going. So at the end of the game, you'll see how some of your choices have played out, and there are multiple endings. What we did is we wanted to create an entirely new mode. We wanted to introduce non-linear campaign structure. We wanted to introduce sandbox gameplay, things that we wanted to bring to the Call of Duty campaign experience, in addition to sort of that epic and cinematic campaign experience that people have come to expect that we're going to deliver with them in a Call of Duty game. And so with Strike Force modes, there are going to be these conflicts that are going on in the world, and you're going to get the lay of the land, and you're going to hear about these proxy wars that are going on, and you're going to go in with one of your Black Ops teams to take them on. And everything about it is non-linear, so you'll have a choice of which of these Strike Force missions you can take. As you choose them, you can either succeed or you can fail, and the story will progress from there. Now, of course, if you want to go back and replay it, if you failed and you want to succeed, you can do that as well, of course. And if you want to go back and play some of the other ones, you can do that as well. But the campaign itself, the story will just progress as if you were playing another story mission, right? So it's part of that overall story. Now, on pretty much every level, it's different. So the gameplay is also different. I mentioned that it's sandbox gameplay. So when you get dropped in with your squad, you're going to be dropped in with the tools and the toys of the future, right? So all the drones. So you'll have quads that you can fly. You'll have automated sentry drones on the ground. You'll have our cognitive land assault weapon, which is sort of a quadped, sort of giant tank with some heavy caliber machinery on it. And you'll be able to take over any of those and play any of those at any time while you're playing a Strike Force level. You'll be able to move between different squad members. You'll be able to play the general on the battlefield. You can play from a tactical position. You can play the whole level from a tactical position. You can play it if you just like playing Call of Duty with the gun in your hand and you don't want to do any of the flying or the driving or the tactical. You can do that too. You can play it any way you want, and it'll play out differently. You can take on the objectives in whatever order you want on those levels. So it's sort of a, it's a great way for people to experience the campaign in an entirely different way than they've ever had with Call of Duty. We want to blow you guys away each and every time we make one of these games. But we also want to introduce some of these non-linear components and new campaign structure and introduce new gameplay in a way that may or may not make sense inside of sort of a more scripted cinematic experience. And so within the fiction, there's clearly this Cold War that's going on, this second Cold War in the future, and it makes sense that there'll be other things that'll be going on in the world, other hotspots where the black operations are going. And these are those missions that you get to play. And of course, as you're playing those will have an impact on the overarching Cold War, much like you would expect a conflict would. So it fits in nicely, but it also allows us the flexibility to be able to introduce all kinds of new gameplay and new gameplay structures to Call of Duty.
They'll always need men like us. Those who are willing to do what others cannot.